This is my 2022 Kawasaki Ninja 400. Let's get moving because I'm getting hot. Ugh, it's me. I bought this thing brand new back in 2022. It's actually the second one I've owned, and between the two of them, I've put over 15,000 miles on a Ninja 400. So I want to talk a little bit about today whether or not this is still a gold standard starter bike for people interested in sport bikes. Let's talk about it. So I'm not going to bury the lead on this, right? I think this is still a great starter bike, and I want to talk about why in this video. So there's two main reasons that I want to touch on. There's some smaller stuff I'm going to talk about too, but two main reasons. Those are being the cost of ownership and the kind of power and handling of this bike, I think, are perfect for a new rider. Now, I bought this bike brand new back in 2022, so I paid brand new prices, which ended up being, I think, a little over $6,000 out the door. You know, tax, title, destination, all that. But Kawasaki has replaced this with the Ninja 500 in their lineup, so you can't buy them new anymore. And the used market, at least around me, I should say, at least around me, you can get these in pretty good condition as of March 2025. Hello? I mean, is there a reason we're going 10 miles an hour? What are we doing here, man? Anyway, at least around me, as of March 2025, you can get these things in pretty good condition. You know, never been dropped and all that for $4,000 to $5,000. So not too bad. Now, outside of buying the bike itself, there's kind of two main and maybe gas. There's kind of two main expenses you're going to have with something like this, right? You're going to have the insurance and the cost of maintenance. Now, insurance is going to depend on a multitude of factors, but for me, when I very first started riding, I was 21, had no previous riding experience. I only had my temps, so no endorsement. I hadn't taken a safety course, any of that. I was paying about $58 a month for full coverage for my previous Ninja 400. That was a brand new bike also. So, you know, obviously that's going to vary, even so much as like where you live is going to factor into that, but shop around if you're getting ridiculous quotes, because a lot of insurance companies don't necessarily want to insure young sport bike riders and might give you the go-away rate, right? So make sure to shop around. As far as maintenance, fortunately, this thing is pretty cheap to maintain, especially if you're willing to learn how to do some basic maintenance yourself, right? I mean, I've had this bike, this particular one, since it was brand new, and I've not had a single mechanical issue with it. So the only work I've done on it has been just, you know, routine maintenance, oil changes, spark plugs, air filter, tires, brakes, obviously routine chain maintenance. But all that's going to be true with any bike that you own, so that's not a Ninja 400 specific thing. The most expensive repair, quote unquote, I've had to do has just been tires. You know, and again, that's true on any bike. I know I think some of the earlier models, like the 2018s, 2019s maybe, I've heard of having issues with clutch slipping, especially once you get them a bit more up into the miles. I'm not entirely sure if that affects the later models. I mean, this is a 22. But from what I understand, it's a pretty easy fix. Just, you know, stiffer clutch springs, and that usually does the trick. So I guess that's the only mechanical issue I'm aware of with these Ninja 400s. Also, in regards to cost of ownership, the aftermarket support on these things is pretty good because, I mean, they sold a lot of them. It's a very popular starter bike, and for a good reason. So if you're interested in modding the bike at all, I mean, exhaust, tail tidy, mirrors, windscreen, if you want to get into performance mods, there's a ton of options there. I mean, I've seen people turn these into track-only bikes, where they've put resets and clip-ons and fairings and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So there's tons of options for aftermarket support as well with these bikes. The other main factors I think that make this bike great for beginners is going to be the power and the handling. Now this thing's powered by a 399cc parallel twin that Kawasaki claims makes 45 horsepower and about 28 foot-pounds of torque, which personally I think for a new rider is a great number, right? I think it's not so much that you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. I mean, you still can. I mean, you can get into trouble. You can get into trouble on a Grom if you're being dumb enough, right? But you know, I think it's not going to be by accident, right? And you're not going to loop the thing or whatever. But at the same time, it's not so little power that you're not able to keep up with traffic. You know, this thing can go on the highway and it'll still have passing power. It'll do highway speeds and you'll be able to pass people at highway speeds. Now, you are going to hear people call these things slow. You know, that's just common. Or any starter bike for that matter. And yeah, if your metric for speed is straight line performance, this is not it, right? If the only desire you have in learning to ride a motorcycle is roll racing, you're going, you know, 150 on the highway, I mean, you're not going to do that on a Ninja 400, let's be honest, you know. But if you're interested in hitting some twisties or going to the track, or honestly, even if you just want like a sportier daily to commute on, this thing's pretty great. And I think it has a good power level for all of those things. In addition to the power, the weight on this thing is great. It weighs 365 pounds wet, ready to ride, all the fluids and all that, which is pretty light, especially for a modern sport bike. I mean, the CBR 500R, for example, which is, I would say, a model that competes with this bike, that thing weighs like 420 pounds, you know, and something as simple as, like, I have a slip-on exhaust on here. I think the weight difference between that is somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds, because I just have a little, like, Aero one on. That stock muffler is huge and heavy, so, you know, you're saving 60 plus pounds potentially over similar models. Why is that a good thing for a new rider? Well, first of all, it's going to be super easy to maneuver around at slow speed. When you're a new rider, you may not have your balance yet. You may, you know, find low speed maneuvering quite awkward, and having a super light bike is going to be really helpful to, one, avoiding you dropping the thing, and two, it's also really great for handling. For example, cornering. Having a light bike makes it so you can really just flick in a corner super easy. You don't have to, you know, force the bar in, because there's not a whole lot of mass to move around. Another feature this bike has that's good for starters is going to be a slipper clutch, or good for anyone really. Now, I'm not an engineer. I'm not exactly entirely sure on how a slipper clutch works, but my understanding is it does exactly what it says. It lets the clutch slip a little, and that's going to help, from what I understand, remove some jerkiness from, you know, bad clutch and throttle input. Something, for example, like if you downshift and, you know, you're not exactly light at letting off the clutch, or you don't rev match or whatever, you're not going to, like, skip the rear tire or something. Not that I know that this bike could do that anyway, but I think that's the concept, and I think it's good for a new rider to have that, because you're going to be a little bit jerky on the controls when you're first learning. These bikes also optionally came with ABS. Now, this model that I'm on right now does not have ABS. I learned to ride without ABS, and I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't have it, but, you know, if you're looking at buying these things used, and, you know, the ABS one costs the same as a regular one, or not that much more, if it's within your budget, I strongly encourage you to go get the ABS model. ABS is something that is nice to have and hopefully not need, as opposed to, you know, need and not have. So at least when I was looking at Marketplace, they didn't seem to be that much more expensive. So if you're a new rider and you're looking to get one of these, maybe consider the ABS. But at the same time, it's not the end of the world if you don't have it. Plenty of people have learned to ride without ABS, myself included. Oh, these are new. I wonder how much these cost. Probably way too much. Upper 200s? That's crazy. Anyway, overall, do I still think that this bike, as of 2025, is still a good option for a new rider? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can pick these things up used for a pretty reasonable price. They're fairly reliable. They're super easy to learn on. You know, they're going to be very forgiving, right? You can be a little jerky on the controls. It's not going to send you into the sky if you do that. You know, it's perfect for learning on, in my opinion. Now, is this a bike that after you buy it and ride it around for a few months and get a feel for the controls, are you going to want to get rid of it? Well, I mentioned earlier I've been on a Ninja 400 for a little over 4 years now, so I personally don't think so. I think it's a bike that is going to help you learn the fundamentals and that you can grow into a little bit and really have some fun on. That being said, if straight line performance is your thing, I mean, you're going to outgrow it pretty quick, right? Anyway, I hope that this has maybe helped answer some questions you might have about a Ninja 400 as a first bike. Additionally, if you have any other questions you'd like to ask, feel free to drop them in the comments. I love this bike and I'm happy to share any kind of experiences or, like I said, any questions you might have. I'll be happy to answer them down in the comments. Anyway, I'm going to get out and continue to enjoy this beautiful sunny 65-degree day here in Ohio in March. And feel free to check out something else on the channel, and I'll see you all next time.